Hey, what's going on, everybody? Just wanted to make a quick video today on tech sales boot camps in 2024, 2025, and beyond, because the landscape has changed immensely since I started making content like 2 to 3 years ago. And this entire video was actually inspired by, I recently went on a trip. I met someone I had never met before, and they actually told me they had tried to break into tech sales last year, and they got to multiple final round interviews and ultimately didn't get the job. And the feedback was that they took someone with more experience. That's certainly more common now. I mean, unfortunately, with the layoffs, there are a lot of tech sales professionals that have 1 to 2 years of experience looking for work. But I will tell you, it is not impossible by any means to break in. I'm still seeing repeatedly people break in without experience. And I want to lead that into why you should or should not take a boot camp. This is not going to be a video that ends with me saying, hey, check the link in the description for $50 off and use my link to get blah, blah, blah. I really don't care. I have no agenda here. Full transparency and disclosure, I do run a boot camp myself. Not even gonna name the name of it, but we have helped a ton of people break in, and I've seen both sides. I've seen students who have done it just on this YouTube channel alone. They've taken the advice here and they broke it in, and that's fine, more power to them. And then I've seen people that have tremendously benefited from a boot camp. I think the value of a boot camp, not all boot camps, but some boot camps, is higher than ever, and I'll explain that further. But I do think there's a case to be made for saving your money and not taking a boot camp, and we'll break it down in further detail. So the first case, and really what I want to talk about now, is like the difference from when I broke into tech sales about 5 years ago to now. It is a much more popular career. Social media has blown it out of proportion. You have people, I mean, to be honest with you, outright lying that they're making $500,000 a year their first year in tech sales. I'm not really worried about those people. They're clearly scammers. But really, beyond that, I want to talk about, there's been tons of boot camps that have popped up. So there are not just the formal boot camps. Like when I broke in, there were the big ones like SV Academy. I think there was one named like FlockJ, and I was looking at a few others that were anywhere from like $10,000 to $30,000. I will tell you right now, if you're looking for one piece of advice from this video, those boot camps that are $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, those are an absolute waste of money now. The game has completely changed, and it's nothing against those companies. I'm sure they have reputable people there, but I'm seeing some people saying like, hey, tap into our alumni network, and that's like the whole value proposition of their $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 course is like, I used to work at a big company, you can tap into my network for like $15,000. That's insane, because there's nothing stopping you from sending a very well thought out message to someone that works at a big company, asking to pick their brain for 15 minutes, and you can just as easily network into those big companies as you can with paying $15,000. It's an absolute waste of money. But that being said, there are some lower cost options. And again, I'm not even going to name the program that I run, own, and operate. There are multiple options that are now, I would say, between $500 and $2,000 that are pretty legit from everything I've seen. I'll just leave it at that. And I think the biggest thing that people need to understand is whether you go a boot camp or don't go a boot camp, you need to ask yourself, what is the boot camp solving for you? And really what that question is, said another way, is like, how much do you not know about tech sales? How much do you not know about the tech sales interview process? How much do you not know about how to structure a cold email, a cold call, all of these different things? And maybe you also have sales experience, but you've never done it in tech. And I would really check yourself as well. Sure, maybe you've sold cars and you do car sales, but are you aware of what a tech sales phone call is, what a tech sales process is? And if you know enough about those, and or you have someone in your network, whether it's, you know, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your family friend, or someone you graduated college with, or something of that nature, then I think honestly, I would start there. I would pick their brain, see if they can really help you make a lot of progress. And if so, then at that point, I do start to question the value of a boot camp, even if it's $500 to $2,000. Now, the flip side is people's time is limited. Not everyone you talk to, just because they work in tech sales, is going to be a great resource for you. And really, again, you know, I have no doubt, and I have seen people from, you know, viewers of this YouTube channel that just use my YouTube videos and they have broken into tech sales, and that's amazing. More power to them. But also, I have no doubt it will also take a lot longer if, for instance, going back to the question I had previously of, what do you know about tech sales? What do you know about cold calling? What do you know about how to apply, how to interview, all of these different things? If you have a lot of those question marks unanswered, even if you go about it yourself, it is going to take a lot longer than, in theory again, I'm not just saying take a boot camp, but in theory, a boot camp would solve a lot of those problems by having all of that laid out end to end. So you don't even have to guess about what to do anymore. You can show up and you can take the curriculum and you can know with a high degree of certainty that you are working on the right things at all times, because it's very elusive and it's very exciting, for instance, to start watching like, hey, I'm gonna break into sales, and you start watching a lot of videos and you feel like in your mind you're making a lot of progress. But where I see a lot of people break down, not everyone, but where I do see a lot of people break down is they'll watch a lot of videos, and that alone took them 2 months to get to a point where they had their resume, their LinkedIn on point so they could actually apply. But then the worst of this that I've seen is people that are doing it themselves, again, more power to them. They'll get an interview at a really great company and they'll show up and they've never done a practice interview. They have no idea what to expect in a recruiter interview, or maybe they get past the recruiter interview, but now they go into their first cold call exercise and they've never done a cold call. And not only that, they don't know what to expect, because again, like, if you can do it yourself, more power to you. But when you get in tech sales interviews, sure, you can watch cold calls on YouTube and they're valuable. They're valuable. But the interview intentionally, the interviewer, even aside from just seeing how well you run a cold call, they are intentionally going to trip you up. They're intentionally going to throw a few jabs that if you've been through this process before, you know, right? So if there's a boot camp that is valuable, I would argue that it's won by someone who has worked in the career for a long time, ideally is still employed in tech sales and has gone through tons of interviews. But also, I think, a big part of this as well, and when I think back to my own experience, the way that I got the most coaching was, luckily, I had a pretty solid network from my engineering career of engineers like myself who did not like engineering and went to sales. So I was able to pick their brain on, what should I do? What is a recruiter interview like? Then I would pass the recruiter interview and I was freaking out, and I would call them again and say, hey, I've got my first ever sales manager interview. What do I do? Right? And so definitely from, a teaching, whether it's live or pre-recorded videos, but also what I would really recommend is having access to someone who can coach you live, because if you have the best of both worlds, you can really iterate a lot more quickly. And so tying this all in again, I think, can you do this yourself? Absolutely. It may take longer, but I think if you don't have the money and you're not in a position to go to a boot camp, that's a very valid path. Now, when we look at boot camps, this is probably a separate video in of itself, and it shouldn't be for me to decide. I run my own, so it's not for me to say what's good, what's bad. I don't really play the game of trashing my competitors. The one thing I will absolutely die on a hill on is these boot camps that are $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, and they say, hey, you can tap into our network. We'll introduce you to people at these great companies. Those are a complete waste of money, because again, I may have said this already, but there is nothing stopping you from reaching out to SDRs at these big companies and asking them to pick their brain. And then once you get them on a call, asking them for a referral. And I would argue, if nothing else, paying someone $10,000 to do that is robbing yourself of actually developing the skills of how to do that in the first place. So I think all of those offerings are, to me, like the value that they provide for $15,000 when compared to something that is $500 to $1,000 to maybe $2,000 at most, the value of $10,000 plus more dollars, absolutely not worth it. And I'll tell you too, from what I see on the marketing and all of these different things, their whole thing is like, well, hey, we'll get you an $80,000 job, so only if you get that job do you have to pay us $10,000. Still not worth it. And that's exactly the kind of logic and reasoning they want you to build in your brain. And the next thing you know, you're stuck on the hook with a $10,000 bill that you can pay, and sure, you have a job, but you didn't need to pay it. Now, the last thing I'll say, again, when it comes to a boot camp and just the overall tech sales landscape right now, I think the most important thing you need to understand, whether you go a boot camp or not, is the career even when I broke in 2020, it was decently popular. Now it's insane. I mean, it's night and day, dude. Everybody is trying to break into tech sales, and it's good. I mean, it's a great career. But now more than ever, I am still seeing people without experience breaking in consistently, and I might add breaking into really great companies as well. But you as a candidate need to understand and know that going into these interviews, you are the best candidate. And what I mean is you can go about it yourself. There's lots of videos on YouTube, and I think there's lots of great videos on YouTube that can kind of piece this together if you do it over time. But when you get into, actually trying to get your resume and LinkedIn in order, are you confident that the way you're portraying your experience is the best way possible? And if so, great, do it yourself. But then also, now when we think about, okay, well, you should probably message people at your target companies, whether it's the recruiter to try and set up an interview or fellow SDRs at the company so you can try and get kind of a referral, backdoor, all of these different things. When it comes to that, are you sure that your messaging is absolutely on point? Have you done that before? And if so, and you're confident, great, right? Then when we get to the interview and you see where this is going, but again, if you can do this yourself, I'm not even saying and trying to scare you out of doing it yourself, but the value that a well and reasonably priced bootcamp can provide is making sure, without exception, that every single step of the way, from writing the first line on your resume to all the way up to getting the offer and negotiating for $10,000 more, that is the value that, again, a good bootcamp, and you need to decide for yourself which one that is the value that in theory a bootcamp's going to provide. When you get the interview with your number one target company and you have the chance to work at a Fortune 500 tech company, are you going into every single interview knowing without a doubt you have prepared as best you can, not just to know the company, but you understand what you can largely expect from an interview? You can tap into, ideally, a network of people that have either worked at or still work at, or either alumni from the program that work at some of these big and huge companies that a lot of people are trying to break into. And again, there's many other things I could rattle off, and I'm not even going to mention the name of the program that I own and operate. We have helped, at this point, over hundreds of people break into tech sales, and we work with some of the best reps at companies like AWS, Snowflake, Outreach, and others. And the only reason I say that is our most successful student, credit to him, did not have a degree, had a background in construction project management, ultimately broke into a really great company, ZoomInfo, and after working there for 3 months, got approached by AWS, is now making $150K plus. You can literally see the full video interview. I will say too, it's on our channel, but I just can't stress that enough of, like, he wanted guidance. He came into the course. He used our live coaching, our videos, and all of these different things. And if you're in a position where you think you would really value from not having to guess of what you should study, what you should focus on, and you also have live coaching as well, I think that's the sweet spot. And if you're spending between $500 and $2,000, I think it's worth it. Otherwise, for those of you that want to go about it on your own, I have tons of videos on this channel, and I encourage you to try it and try and get as far as you can on your own. And only if you're not having success, maybe you're not in a position to buy a boot camp and or you're questioning if it's worthwhile, do it yourself. There's tons of great information out there, and I would encourage you to try and go about it yourself. And then, only then, if you need a boot camp, then looking at something, again, in that $500 to $2,000 price range is probably the place you want to be. But if nothing else, I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest. I've been driving for quite a while now, so I hope somewhere in that ramble that you got a lot out of it. Again, like I promised, I'm not going to link anything in the description. I don't have a coupon code, and I really don't care if at the end of the day you choose to do it yourself, you choose to go with someone else's bootcamp. But I think so much has changed really in the last 2 to 3 years in particular, that hopefully that gives you a modern take on if you should take one, who you should consider, and all of those different things. So we'll see you in our next video, and appreciate everyone for riding along.